Disclaimer. Please forgive me now for there may be mispronunciations in this video. I will also be using people's first names instead of their last names because some of their last names are harder for me to pronounce. Where is the portal to hell? There are many locations that claim such a title, but little did anyone know there is a home in Indiana that had opened up a portal of 4 demons to possess an innocent family. It would eventually involve a DCS intervention, a string of psychological tests, a police investigation, and a series of exorcisms. Known by a couple of names such as the Ammons Haunting Case, 200 Demon House, or the Demon House. Here's their story. It begins in November 2011, when the Ammons family moved into a rental house on Carolina Street in Gary, Indiana. It wouldn't take long when big black flies swarmed their screened-in porch in December, despite the winter chill. No matter how much they killed the flies, they kept coming back. Rosa Campbell, LaToya Ammons' mother, and LaToya Ammons herself would occasionally hear the clumping sound of footsteps climbing the basement stairs and the creak of a door opening between the basement and the kitchen, but no one was there. So they locked the door, but the noise continued. Rosa awoke one night and saw a shadowy figure of a man pacing her living room. She leaped out of bed to investigate and found a large, wet footprints on the floor. March 10th, 2012, at about 2 a.m. The family was up due to mourning the death of a loved one with a group of friends. LaToya, who was in Rosa's bedroom, started screaming, "Mama, Mama!" Rosa says she ran into her bedroom where her then 12-year-old granddaughter and a friend were staying. They found the 12-year-old levitating above the bed unconscious. Terrified, LaToya and several others surrounded the girl, praying. She would eventually descend onto the bed and woke up with no memory of what happened. The people who were visiting that night refused to return. That's when Rosa and LaToya decided to seek help. When they called the local churches, most refused to listen. Eventually, after listening to Rosa and LaToya talk about the house and visiting it, officials at one church told them the house had spirits inside. They recommended the family to clean the home with bleach and ammonia, then use oil to draw crosses on every door and window. At the church's suggestion, LaToya would pour olive oil on her 3 children's hands and feet, then smeared the oil in the shape of a cross on their foreheads. They also reached to 2 clairvoyants who said that the house was besieged by more than 200 demons. The clairvoyants told them that they should move, but that wasn't an option for the cash-strapped family. Instead, LaToya took a clairvoyant's advice and made an altar in the basement. LaToya covered a end table with a white sheet and placed a white candle and a statue of Mary, Joseph, and Jesus on it. She opened the Bible to Psalm 91. Also in the clairvoyant's advice, LaToya and her friend wore white and they burned sage and sulfur throughout the house, starting upstairs and working their way down. The smoke was so thick they could hardly breathe. LaToya drew a cross with the smoke and the person she was with read Psalm 91 while they moved through the house. Nothing odd happened for 3 days, but then things got worse. Demons began possessing LaToya and her children, who were then the ages of 7, 9, and 12. The kids' eyes bulged, evil smiles crossed their faces, and their voices would deepen. Rosa would come to say that the demons didn't affect her because she was born with protection from evil, and that she, and others like her, have a guardian who protects them. LaToya felt weak, lightheaded, and warm when she was possessed. Her body shook and she felt out of control. The youngest boy, then 7, sat in the closet talking to a boy no one else could see. The other boy described what it felt like to be killed. The 7-year-old would be flung out of the bathroom once, and a headboard once smacked LaToya's daughter, causing a wound that needed stitches. The 12-year-old daughter would tell mental health professionals that she sometimes felt as if she was being choked and held down so she couldn't speak or move. She heard a voice say she'd never see her family again and wouldn't live another 20 minutes. Sometimes when the night was really bad, the family would sleep at a hotel. In desperation, on April 19th, 2012, the family went to their family physician. LaToya told him what they were going through, hoping he would understand. He'd come to write in his medical notes, delusions of ghosts in home, hallucinations, and history of ghosts at home, and delusional. This was all released when LaToya signed a waiver to allow the medical notes to be read. What would happen next would be detailed in a DCS report of a family case manager's interviews with the medical staff. One of LaToya's sons cursed the physician in demonic voices. Medical staff said the youngest boy was lifted and thrown into the wall with nobody touching him. Both boys passed out and wouldn't come to. Rosa cradled one boy in her arms while Latoya held the other. Someone from the doctor's office called 911, and 7 or 8 officers came, and multiple ambulances showed up. Police and emergency personnel took the boys to the Methodist Hospital's campus in Gary. Hospital personnel would laugh at Latoya when she said she wanted to anoint her sons with olive oil. The boys woke up in the hospital, and while the 9-year-old was rational, the youngest screamed and thrashed. It took 5 men to hold him down. Meanwhile, someone called DCS and asked the agency to investigate Latoya for possible child abuse or neglect. The father, whose name is not in the report, speculated that Latoya might have a mental illness. The person truly believed that the children were performing for Latoya, and she was encouraging their behavior. DCS family case manager Valerie Washington was asked to handle the investigation. She gave the following account to the police, and in her intake, officers reported. Hospital personnel examined Latoya and her children and found them to be healthy and free of marks and bruises. A hospital psychiatrist evaluated Latoya and determined she was of sound mind. While Washington talked to Latoya, the 7-year-old started growling and baring his teeth. His eyes rolled back in his head, and he locked his hands around his older brother's throat and refused to let go until adults pried his hands open. Later that night, Washington and a registered nurse, Willie Lee Walker, brought the 2 boys into a small exam room for an interview. Rosa would join them. While inside the room, the 7-year-old stared into his brother's eyes and began to growl again. "It's time to die," the boy said in a naturally deep voice. "I will kill you." The 9-year-old began headbutting Rosa in the stomach. Rosa grabbed her grandson's hands and started praying. According to Washington's original DCS report, an account corroborated by Walker the nurse, the 9-year-old had a weird grin and walked backward up a wall to the ceiling. He then flipped over Rosa, landing on his feet. He never let go of his grandmother's hands. Later, police asked Washington whether the boy had run up the wall, as though performing an acrobatic trick. Washington told them no, and said the boy glided backward on the floor, wall, and ceiling. She would tell the police that she was so scared that she ran out of the room along with Walker. When Washington told a doctor what happened, the doctor did not believe them and asked if the boy would walk up the wall again. But Walker told the doctor that he doubted the boy would repeat the feat, that this kid was not himself when he did that. The boy didn't remember what happened and couldn't do it again. Latoya spent the night at the hospital with her 7-year-old son, while Rosa took Latoya's daughter and older son to the relative's home in Gary. The next day was Latoya's youngest son's 8th birthday. DCS officials asked Rosa to bring the older children back to the hospital, presumably to talk more about what happened. The children wouldn't be going back to the home. DCS took the emergency step of taking custody of the children without a court order. April 20th, 2012, Reverend Michael Magnot received a call from the hospital chaplain. Michael had never received a request like this one before. He was asked to perform an exorcism on Latoya's 9-year-old son. Reverend Michael agreed to interview the family after Sunday Mass a few days later. He wanted to rule out natural cause for what Latoya and her family were experiencing. Reverend Michael came to visit them on April 22nd, 2012. And for 2 hours Latoya and Rosa detailed the experiences for him. Rosa even interrupted the interview to point out a flickering bathroom light. The flickering light would stop each time Michael walked over to investigate, which he attributed to a demonic presence. They interrupted the interview again when Rosa pointed out the blinds in the kitchen swinging even though there was no air current. Michael also saw wet footprints throughout the living room. Latoya complained about having a headache, so Reverend Michael placed a crucifix on her head, at which she started to convulse. After a 4-hour interview, Reverend Michael was convinced that the family was being tormented by demons. He believed there were ghosts in the house as well. He blessed the house before he left, praying and reading from the Bible and sprinkling holy water in each room. Reverend Michael told Latoya and Rosa to leave because it wasn't safe, so they temporarily moved in with a relative. Less than a week later, the 2 women returned to the house to let Washington, the DCS family case manager, check the condition of the home. Washington asked a Lake County police officer to come with her. 2 other officers, one from Gary and Hammond police departments, asked to join them out of professional curiosity. Latoya refused to go inside, so Rosa agreed to accompany the group. A door in the kitchen led to the basement with concrete floors. Directly under the stairs there was a dirt floor. The concrete around it was jagged, as if it had been broken. The makeshift altar LaToya had created was still there, but with added rings of salt she had poured against the basement walls to deter the demons. Rosa told the officers that the demons seemed to originate from beneath the stairs. Austin, the Gary police captain, who was also there, said he believed in ghosts and supernatural, but he didn't believe in demons. He changed his mind after visiting the Carolina Street. During the interview with Rosa, the audio recorders that belonged to one of the officers malfunctioned. The power light flashed to indicate the batteries were dying, though they had been replaced with fresh batteries earlier that day. Another officer recorded audio, and when he played it back, he heard an unknown voice whisper, "Hey." That same officer took photos of the house, and one of the photos was of the basement stairs, where a cloudy white image in the upper right-hand corner appeared. When the officer enlarged, the photo of the cloud appeared to resemble a face. Enlarging the image revealed a second green image that looked like a female. Officer Austin snapped a few photos with his iPhone, and strange silhouettes appeared in them. Not only that, his radio and his police-issued Ford malfunctioned on the way home. Later on, Austin's garage door refused to open even though the power was on everywhere else. But that's not all. The driver's seat in his 2005 Infiniti started moving backward and forward on its own. He had the car checked at the dealership, and the mechanic told him the motor on the driver's seat was broken, which could have caused a distraction leading to an accident. Even though Officer Austin started to believe LaToya's claims of the paranormal, the mental health professionals evaluating LaToya and her children remained skeptical. In April 2012, DCS petitioned Lake Juvenile Court for temporary worship of the 3 children, and the request was granted. DCS found LaToya neglected her children's education by not having them in school regularly. The agency made the same finding in 2009, but LaToya's reasoning was that the spirits would make them sick or they would be up all night without sleep. The daughter and older son was sent to St. Joseph Carmelite Home in East Chicago, and the youngest son was sent to Christian Haven in Wheatfield for a psychiatric evaluation. The clinical psychologist Stacy Wright, who evaluated the youngest son, said the boy intended to act possessed when he was challenged, redirected, or asked questions he didn't want to answer. In her review, Wright wrote that he seemed coherent and logical except for when he talked about demons. When this happened, his stories became bizarre, fragmented, and illogical. His stories changed each time he told them. He also changed the subject, quizzing Wright on math problems and asking her about outer space. Wright believed the 8-year-old did not suffer from a true psychotic disorder. She had come to write that this appears to be an unfortunate and sad case of a child who had been induced into delusional system perpetrated by his mother and potentially reinforced by other relatives. Clinical psychologist Joel Schwartz, who evaluated LaToya's daughter and older son, came to the same conclusion. The daughter told Schwartz that she saw shadowy figures at the house, and she had went into trances twice. The older son said that doors would slam and stuff started moving around. LaToya was also examined several times by psychologists. She was guarded and did not seem to be experiencing symptoms of psychosis or thought. DCS set goals for the family. One of them stipulated that the children not discuss demons and being possessed and take responsibility for their actions. They would need to participate in therapy to address past behavior. Though DCS credited LaToya for her close bond with her children, the agency suggested she needed to use alternate forms of discipline not directly related to religion and demon possession. Such discipline involved encouragement, rules, and withholding privileges. She could work on these goals during supervised visits with her children. LaToya had to also find a job and appropriate housing. While LaToya worked on meeting those goals, police and DCS officials continued to investigate strange happenings in the house. May 10, 2012. LaToya, Rosa, Officer Austin, and 2 other police officers from the initial visit went back to the house. They were joined by Reverend Michael, 2 Lake County officers with a police dog, and DCS family case manager Samantha Elick. Samantha volunteered in Washington's place because Washington did not want to visit the house again. While everyone but the police dog and an officer headed into the basement, the dog looked around the house, but the dog showed no interest in any particular section. Samantha touched some strange liquid she saw dripping in the basement, and it felt slippery, yet sticky between her fingers. Reverend Michael wanted to check the dirt under the stairs for a pentagram or personal objects that might have been cursed. If he would have found a pentagram, it would indicate a demonic presence and a possible portal to hell. If someone had died in the house and was buried under the stairs, it could explain paranormal activity. One of the police officers dug a 4-foot by 3-foot hole beneath the stairs, unearthing a pink press-on nail, white pairs of panties, a political shirt pin, a lid for a small cooking pan, socks with the bottoms cut off below the ankle, candy wrappers, and a heavy metal object that looked like a weight for a drapery cord. After this, they replaced the dirt and raked over it. Reverend Michael blessed some salt and spread it under the stairs and throughout the basement. Samantha was standing in the living room later on with the rest of the group when she felt her pinky finger starting to tingle and whiten. She said it felt broken. Less than 10 minutes later, Samantha said she felt she was having a panic attack and couldn't breathe, so she walked outside to wait for the group. When Reverend Michael questioned Latoya inside the house, she complained of a headache and shoulder pain, and also joined Samantha outside the house. Officer Austin left the house at nightfall, refusing to stay in the house past dark. The other officers continued to walk through the house. On the main floor, they noticed an oil-like substance dripping from the blinds in the bedroom, but they couldn't figure out where it was coming from. To make sure it wasn't Rosa or Latoya, 2 officers cleaned the oil up with paper towels, and the officers sealed the room for 25 minutes, standing nearby so no one could walk in. When they returned to the bedroom, the oil had reappeared. Reverend Michael explained that this liquid was a manifestation of a paranormal or demonic presence. He would report his findings and ask Bishop Dale Melzack permission to perform an exorcism on Latoya. Reverend Michael said that Dale had never authorized an exorcism in 21 years, but they can't take action in exorcism without requiring a bishop's approval. Dale initially denied Reverend Michael's request to do a church-sanctioned exorcism. The bishop told Reverend Michael to contact other priests who had performed exorcisms. Reverend Michael would need other priests to give him the ritual for a minor exorcism, which did not require church approval. The priest he consulted told him to look it up on the internet. Reverend Michael did an intense blessing on the home to expel bad spirits. That same day, Reverend Michael performed a minor exorcism on Latoya. The ritual consisted of prayers, statements, and appeals to cast out demons. 2 officers and Samantha attended the ritual. Samantha left believing that something was going on, although she wouldn't go as far as saying it was demonic. Samantha had a string of medical problems after visiting the house. A week after visiting, she had gotten 3rd-degree burns from a motorcycle. Within 30 days, she broke 3 ribs jet skiing, broke a hand when she hit a table, and then broke an ankle running in flip-flops. Her friends would stop hanging out with her in fear that the demon attached itself to her. After the minor ritual, Reverend Michael told Latoya to look up the names of the demons that were tormenting her. A name has power, and he planned on using those names to fight the demons during the exorcisms. Latoya went to the internet with her friend to look up the demons' names online by searching for demons that represented the problems the family had been having, but the computer kept shutting down. She would start to feel sick and lightheaded. They were able to find names that would fit the demon. One of the names was Beelzebub, Lord of Flies. Latoya found other high-ranking demons that were assigned to her, including lieutenants and sergeants. After the minor rite, Bishop Dale gave Reverend Michael the permission to exorcise Latoya. It's the same as the minor exorcism but more powerful, with the backing of the Catholic Church. Reverend Michael performed 3 major exorcisms on Latoya, 2 in English and the last in Latin, in June 2012. His voice would get louder and more forceful until the demon weakened. The demon was strong and ultimately made Latoya convulse. 2 police officers who had kept in touch with Reverend Michael since the home investigation stood nearby in case Latoya needed to be restrained. Latoya prayed with Reverend Michael until it became too painful for her to continue. She would come to say she felt something inside her was trying to hold on and inflict pain at the same time. It was different from natural pain and felt as intense as giving birth. Latoya would fall asleep, showing that the demons was lessening the ritual's effects. Between the 2nd and 3rd exorcisms, Reverend Michael went on a retreat where he met a woman who would help him set up a backup plan in case Latoya had problems while Reverend Michael was gone. The woman wrote a long demon name, which isn't recorded anywhere, on a piece of paper and tucked it into an envelope. She then surrounded it with blessed salt. If Latoya would end up having problems, the woman would burn the envelope. By this time, Latoya and Rosa had moved to Indianapolis, where they drove back for the exorcism and court hearings as her children were still in DCS case. Reverend Michael blessed the family's new home to prevent any more problems. But Latoya ended up calling Reverend Michael on his retreat, complaining of bad dreams, so the woman burned the envelope, saving the ashes to burn later in a church bonfire. After that, Latoya's nightmares ended. June of 2012, the final exorcism took place. Reverend Michael prayed and berated the demons in Latin. This time, police officers did not attend. Reverend Michael's brother stood guard instead. Latoya would convulse while he condemned the demons, but did not convulse during prayer. When she fell asleep, Reverend Michael said words of thanksgiving. This would be the last time Latoya saw Reverend Michael. She and her mother drove back to Indianapolis, where they say they now live without fear. The house on Carolina Street became an object of local curiosity, to the point that the owner and landlord had to call the Gary Police Department to ask officers to stop driving by the house because it was scaring his new tenant. Charles Reed, the landlord, said there was no problems in the home before or after Latoya and her family lived there. Latoya regained custody of her 3 children in November 2012, about 6 months after they had been removed. DCS continued to check in on the children to make sure they were going to school. In 2014, Zach Bagans from Ghost Adventures purchased the house for $35,000 and demolished it in January 2016 after filming a documentary in it titled Demon House. It was released on March 16, 2018. Do you think demons possess Latoya, her family, in the house? Did you like this video? Want to support this channel and get early access? Feel free to check out my Patreon page where I create content on cryptids, hauntings, alien abductions, serious killers, and much more. Can't support me there? Like, comment, and subscribe here.